right, opening day is around the corner, and that can only mean one thing: the return of an annual rite of passage, the fifth MLB prediction show in the 5-year history of Props and Hops, and predating Props and Hops by a good bit, the 20th annual MLB Prediction Exchange with the one and only Conor Reilly. Conor, it's that time. Welcome back to Props and Hops.
It sure is, Matt. Thank you so much for having me back. And 20 years going strong. So crazy to hear that. But I enjoy this so much each and every year, and I could not be more excited for the start of the season.
Likewise, I've told you a time or two off the record, but I'll put it on the record as well. I can already anticipate this going down as one of my favorite conversations, if not my single favorite conversation of the year. So can't wait to get this show on the road. I think we can stick with a structure that has stood the test of time, recapping last year's results, sharing our predictions division by division for the upcoming season, also getting to postseason picks, individual awards, and of course our Props and Hops regular season win total beer bet. 3 regular season win totals that we will each pick. Loser on the hook to pick up a tab for the winner. Sound good, Conor?
Sounds absolutely great, man. Let's do this.
All right, and just a quick bit of background for those who are new or could use a refresher. Conor and I go back as roommates high above Commonwealth Avenue at Boston University for the 2005-06 school year. He was the officiant at my wedding in 2014, and I was merely an attendee at Conor's wedding last summer. Let's just say the Reilly family knows how to throw a party, and who knows what's in store if the Mets win it all in 2025. Conor, first things first, we will have the Hops batting leadoff. What are you drinking as we have this conversation tonight?
I am drinking a couple here that may look familiar to you. They're from Hudson Valley Brewing Company. We have the Amorphia and the Glycerin. We are very excited to get into both these today. The Amorphia is a sour India Pale Ale with strawberry and vanilla, clocking in at 6%. And the Glycerin is a sour double India Pale Ale with blackberry and peach, clocking in at 8%. So if I down these two towards the end, my picks might get a little wonky, but trust me on them. And so we're going to be feeling good tonight.
Love it. A double header. And if there's a substitute teacher somewhere in the larger New York City metro area tomorrow, then I guess somebody is going to know why. And I can't match you with the 2 beers in hand tonight, but I do have one I'm excited for. It's called We're Listening. It's a West Coast Pilsner by my favorite brewery, Green Cheek Beer Company. Go figure, I turn to them for an occasion like this. And it reminds me of the beer I featured on our show last year called What Good Curves Can You Throw? Same style, same brewery, different hops in this one. What Good Curves had Motueka hops. This one has a trio of Citra, Mosaic, and Strata. So I'll get into that in just a moment, but the name of this beer, We're Listening. Again, I'll hold up the can for those watching across YouTube and even in the video feed on Spotify. The name is a nod to Green Cheek listening to customer demand for more hoppy lagers, and I think that demand exists for good reason. To me, the appeal of the West Coast Pilsner as a somewhat new beer style is the drinkability and lower alcohol by volume of a Pilsner. This is 5.6% ABV, so not super light, but not a heavy hitter by any stretch. At the same time, think the aroma and flavor of an IPA. Citrus, pine, a nice medley of stone fruit, tropical fruit, maybe some berries, and also a floral touch. I'll give a hat tip to Allison for identifying that floral nuance, maybe as a not so subtle hint to me that she deserves flowers sometime soon. So I've got my marching orders once we wrap up this conversation. When it comes to the beer overall, I could argue that We're Listening is more IPA than Pilsner, but it's a good combination of both. That's plenty of fun in my book. On that note, Conor, cheers to 20 years of doing this.
Cheers to you, buddy. Let's have a great season.
A little extra carbonation as I open this one up, but no harm, no foul. All right. Got the beers open, and let's open up the recap of last year's results. I'm going to say, Conor, a parallel that you may like here. I think Andy Dufresne's classic escape in Shawshank Redemption. We're going to wade through some crap before we come out the other end, but we will get to the other end of all this.
Very well said.
Looking at our division winners in the NL East, both of us were on Atlanta, laying a hefty price of minus 240. Philadelphia won the division with a 6-game cushion to spare. Our Braves and your Mets followed suit, both finishing at 89 and 73. In the NL Central, I found this one intriguing. We were both on the Cubs at 2-1. Surprising alignment, given the division seems like such a crapshoot more often than not. We had the same top 3 teams in the NL Central last year. Only discrepancy was 4th and 5th. You picked Milwaukee to finish last. And Connor, that was after you hit on them at plus 165 to finish first in 2023. And they kept that division crown in 2024.
Gotta trust yourself sometimes. Listen, I believe I was on the narrative of Craig Counsell leaving, joining the Cubs. So I really gassed up Chicago. I plummeted the Brewers. And sometimes it's just not quite how you see it.
One we did see coming came in the NL West. Everybody saw it coming. The Dodgers at minus 450. That was a shoo-in, of course. But Connor, I'd say your feat of strength when it came to this division was not just taking the low-hanging fruit and picking the winner, but nailing the exact order 1 through 5. Dodgers, Padres, D-backs, Giants, and then the Rockies a distant 5th, as you predicted. So a little bit of a bounce back from the NL Central.
Wow, yeah, leave it to the East Coast guy to go out west and look at those West Coast games and really see them straight. I wish I had that kind of perception in the Central, but what can you do?
Yeah, and the East Coast did not exactly serve us well in the American League either. Starting with that Eastern Division, it was our first division with different picks for a champion. I'd say you were both right and wrong. You were right in saying the definition of insanity is doing the same thing, expecting different results. Maybe a bit off base when it came to picking Toronto to win the division at 4-1. They finished in last, 20 games behind the New York Yankees. But I joined you in the wrong camp, taking Baltimore to win that division at 2-1. Looking at the AL Central, we were both on Minnesota at minus 115. A recurring theme here. We were aligned on that pick, but we were wrong with that pick. In the AL West, you had Seattle at 3-1. You said you were waiting for Houston to come crashing down. Didn't happen last year, fortunately for my pick, as I got it right with the Astros as the chalk out of the AL West. So in a nutshell, with our division picks in 2024, you were 1-5. You did get the Dodgers, but keep your head up. You had 4 out of 6 division winners 2 years ago, and the biggest victory lap in our MLB prediction history is coming soon. My division picks only slightly better at 2-4, with the 2 hits being the obvious choices in the Dodgers and the Astros.
Yeah, I feel like we're always looking for a little bit of value with our picks here, having some fun, giving you things that you won't see in every national publication. So we'll take the Dodgers sometimes, but we're looking to get the people a little bit of value, a little bang for their buck. So hopefully we'll bounce back a little stronger this year.
I'd say the entertainment value and the betting value, given your accuracy, really came into shape in the playoffs. You delivered massive redemption after the division picks by getting 5 out of the 6 teams to make the NL playoff field. You have the Dodgers, Phillies, Padres, Braves, and Mets. For a good measure, the Padres were plus 132 and the Mets were 2-1 to make the playoffs. So to your point, this wasn't just taking the chalk. You did go out on a bit of a limb, and you were correct in doing so there. Your only miss was those NL Central champion Brewers once again, but your Mets crushed their souls in dramatic fashion.
They sure did, and the Mets made me sweat that playoff appearance bet down to the very, very, very last game of the season, that doubleheader against Atlanta. But what a ride they went on after that, going to Milwaukee, Pete Alonso hitting definitely the biggest home run, I think, of my lifetime as far as the stakes go in the playoffs, and then going and taking out the Phillies in 4 games in the divisional. And, the Dodgers were the Dodgers. I don't think anyone was beating them that year, but what a run they went on. Really a memorable one.
As you talk about the Alonso homer, I'm also taking back to the Endy Chavez home run robbery. I believe this was the 2006 NLCS against the Cardinals. I'm sure you can check me if I'm off base on that. But Connor, between the Alonso homer or the Endy Chavez home run theft, which one goes down at the top of the pecking order in your book?
The Endy catch has a very special place in my heart. It was my second year at Boston University. Still crying that you had transferred over and we were no longer roommates, but that was the following autumn. I think the Endy gets a slight edge in my book over that Alonso home run, just because, it's just something you've never seen before. I think as Alonso went up, people kind of had in mind, what a rotten year he's had kind of so far towards the end. Maybe he redeemed himself. The thought was in the very, 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 very back of my mind. But once Scott Rowland hit that home run, hit that fly ball to left field, nobody thought Endy was catching that. And just a pure ecstasy and shock of it all. Alonso's right up there, but I did not see this question coming, and it's really bringing back some really wonderful memories, I gotta say. But really, razor thin top 2 in my book. I'll give Endy a slight edge because it was in the NLCS Game 7 rather than the wild card round.
All right. Well, if nothing else, if I'm bringing back some fond memories, then I'll take that as a cue that I'm doing my job for the purposes of this conversation. And Connor, one more thing before we move on from that Mets win over the Brewers in dramatic fashion in last year's postseason. Tell us about the story behind the jersey that you've got on for this evening's conversation.
Yeah, this is one of the rare road Mets jerseys I have. It was a free giveaway. Usually that's where my jerseys come from with the prices these days. But it's a Jacob deGrom road jersey. And I brought this up because me and my wife actually watched the wild card round in Cooperstown. She had never been to the Hall of Fame before. I had not been in several years. So we planned this October trip to Cooperstown, honestly not thinking the Mets were going to be anywhere near the playoffs. So when we booked this trip, they ended up making it. We are watching it in our Cooperstown tiny motel, and Pete Alonso took Devin Williams deep in that game 3, and it was so cool because we went to the Hall of Fame the next day. They have all the last night's scores, so we went to the Hall of Fame on the scoreboard. I got a picture pointing to 4-2 Mets, and it was such a special night. I'll never forget because it was just oh my god, this is not happening. And to be in Cooperstown for it, in a baseball state of mind, best place ever to go to. It was really, really special.
Well, I don't think this next talking point is going to be able to compete with that, but we can keep the good times rolling because if we take a snapshot of the AL playoff predictions on your end last year, you hit on a 3-leg parlay you threw out there. The Orioles, Yankees, and Astros all to make the playoffs. They were all chalky to get there, but put the 3 together and you're looking at a nice payout of plus 161.
Yeah, I think that was I just couldn't believe those odds last year. It was so heavy favorites. So it didn't make sense to me taking one. You put all 3 of them into it, get a decent bang for your buck. And I was really happy to see that one hit.
And when we look at the World Series, you and I were both on Baltimore to win the American League at plus 650. Once again, we were aligned, but wrong on that one. You had the O's winning it all for good measure at 14-1, beating the Cubs in 6 games. I had the Dodgers winning it all at plus 350, went out on a major limb with that pick, I know. I had them beating the wrong AL East team, but not too bad to have taken the Dodgers in 5 games, this time almost exactly a year ago. Connor, I feel like historically the postseason is the place our predictions go to fly off the rails. Last year, it was our regular season picks that left much to be desired, and it kind of feels like we stepped up our games a bit in the playoffs.
Yeah, nice job by you. I feel like plus 350 this time of year seems like, that's nothing. It's not even worth. But, once it actually cashes, you're like, oh, this is 3 times my money. This is pretty nice. So it's just a different perspectives. But nice job on you hitting that. Hey, cash is cash. And you got the winner there. And nice job by you.
Thank you. I will take it, even though it was admittedly one of the more conservative picks to be had. And speaking of outcomes that may seem obvious in hindsight, in the MVP market in the National League, we both took a bit of a swing, especially you. Fernando Tatis was 10-1. I took Mookie Betts at plus 650. Of course, the winner was Betts' teammate, Shohei Ohtani, unanimous despite not pitching last season, and especially impressive after the dramatic start to the season, considering some of the off-field headlines that were out there. I don't know what to make of Ohtani at this point. He just never ceases to amaze.
He's just incredible. We're definitely going to look back one day and say, did we really watch that guy play baseball for so long? I feel like it's just history happens every day in front of our eyes. He's been wonderful for the game. He travels on the road. Even the dog days of summer, the rotten teams, fans come out to see him. It's really incredible. The Mets play the Dodgers, of course, in the NLCS. I forgot what it was like to face Ohtani over and over in a 3-game series, let alone in a 6-game playoff series. Just like, oh my God, just get this guy away from me. He just dominates.
It seems like he's up every other batter.
Every time. It's wild, and it's just a joy to see him play, and good for him.
And another guy that you have gotten a lot of joy out of watching play, by the sound of it, in the American League, Julio Rodriguez. You picked him 2 straight years to win AL MVP. Didn't come through, but that's going to happen sometimes when you're taking long shots. Rodriguez was 10-1 last year. I was on Adley Rutschman at 25-1. Again, we were both bullish on Baltimore. It was the Orioles' AL East rival, Aaron Judge, taking home the hardware in the American League in 2024. Looking at the Cy Young Award market in the National League, here comes the victory lap. Your tee-up to the pick last year was kind of a throwaway comment. You said, we're getting fun with this. And you were also getting it right. The Chris Sale revival at 30-1. Connor, a hearty well played.
We sure had fun with it. You see a name that he's shown he had the arm to do it, coming off an injury. The value was there. Was really a shot in the dark, but after a couple months of the season, it was like, oh, okay, he's got his fastball back. He was looking great. He sure enough broke down at the very, very, very end. I'm sure a lot of people expected that happened more like in June than in September, October, but he was in it for almost the long haul, and he was able to cash it. So thanks, Chris.
And him cashing it meant that my pick, Sales' teammate Spencer Strider, came up woefully short despite the much shorter price of plus 450. Strider's season ending in April after just 2 starts. And the American League, you took a flyer on Corbin Burns at 8-1. I took a slightly bigger flyer on George Kirby at 12-1. The winner, Detroit lefty Tariq Skubal. Connor, I'm not as close to the game as I was as a kid, following the Angels religiously. And when they're out of it, I'm not as familiar with AL Central starting pitchers. Am I even pronouncing that name correctly?
I got Tariq Skubal.
All right, I will take your word for it.
And that's only from my, fantasy baseball podcast, saying that this guy is the second coming now. Good. He had a heck of a season, though. Those stats are wild. I believe he won the Triple Crown or came close to it. He was remarkable.
Another remarkable outcome last year for one of us, I would say, is the regular season win total beer bet. There were 2 themes for both of us. A shared theme of ours was fading human achievement. All 6 picks were unders between the 2 of us. And unders can often have more value than overs. For you, the other theme was new faces in new places, taking a look at new managers. You had Cleveland under 79.5 wins in light of Terry Francona's departure. That one fell short, with Cleveland racking up 92 wins en route to the AL Central title. Milwaukee, another pick of yours to fade under 77.5 after Craig Counsell's departure to the Cubs, as you touched on earlier. That one came up a good bit short as well. The Brewers racking up 93 wins en route to the NL Central crown. Connor, maybe some coastal bias here. The Central Division's not so good to you in 2024.
That was relentless. Just seeing those teams get closer and closer as their magic number to clinch the playoffs went down and down with the seemingly weeks left. I just thought, oh my goodness, Connor, please stay within 10 games. So if you're going to miss big, I guess, go for the value. But yeah, that was some big time miss on my part.
You did come within 10 games in your third pick, Washington under 66.5. That one came up short as the Nationals posted 71 victories in 2024.
Only one way to go from here with the over-unders. I'm coming back strong. I need that bet back in my apartment.
All right, we'll see if we can make that happen here. On my end, the other theme that was unique to my picks was looking to pick off discrepancies between sharp books and square books, using the sharper books as a source of truth. And we've got a lot more to come with that when we get to our 2025 picks. But a quick rapid-fire rundown of the 2024 regular season win total results for me. I did have the Rockies under 60.5, and that lost by the hook. They finished 61-101. Luckily, didn't end up mattering for the purposes of settling this wager. Also had my beloved Angels under 72.5 wins. That one took care of itself with 9 games to spare. And Minnesota under 86.5 wins. They posted 82 victories last year. So you went 0-3, but again, no shame after acing the playoff fields and the NL Cy Young market. I was 2-1. Connor, consider your debt paid in full. Earlier this month, I had a business trip to New York, and my highlight of the trip was the 2 of us getting together for dinner and a sports betting award show. Shout out to the Starties. And we had exceptional cocktail bars bookending the evening, including a nightcap at a spot in Soho called Soso's. And if I didn't say it then, I'll say it now for the record. Soso's makes one of the best old fashions I've experienced, especially in your company and on your tab.
That was absolutely incredible. The Starties, they did a great job with that whole event, being able to see you. I got a little spoiled now. I'm used to coming on the podcast and saying, hey, it's been forever. Great to see you again. But I feel like in the last 12 months, we had my bachelor party, my wedding, and we came for the Starties. So you've been my second neighbor here in New York. So it's so great to share those times with you. And yeah, that was a really, really great event and a great night.
And once we wrap up this recording, I'll see if it's possible to put another meetup or 2 on the books. I have a couple trips in the fold in the months to come. So maybe we can get our next adventures in the world of hops or in cocktails sooner rather than later.
Fantastic. You count me in. You know that.
Absolutely. All right. And I think the time has now come to dive into our 2025 predictions. Here's the annual disclaimer. These are designed with more entertainment value than betting value in mind. At this point, the market's quite efficient. Numbers have been largely hammered into place. We don't make our money betting on baseball. So these are small bets, even if there are any bets for the 2 of us. more about having fun with predictions than guaranteeing that these bets are showing any kind of serious value. The goal is to provide value where we can, but please don't feel compelled to rush to the betting window based on anything you hear in this episode. We will go ahead and note odds for each division winner as of the most recent price checks. Connor, with that out of the way, go ahead and lead us off, starting in your backyard, the NL East.
The NL East, yes, and that was an excellent disclaimer there. So when I say I'm hammering the Mets, that is a hammer in the most conservative sense ever with this. But I did find the Mets at plus 240. I do have them winning this division, fully acknowledging that everything possible went wrong for the Braves last year as far as injuries go, with Acuna and Albies all missing time, as well as, of course, Spencer Strider, your Cy Young winner. So I do sense a big bounce back from the Braves. But I do think the Mets have done enough in terms of bringing Soto in, of course, the huge $765 million pride and joy of owner Steve Cohen. I think he adds to a lineup with Alonso and Lindor and Nimmo and Alvarez when he comes back. I think the Mets do have the best lineup in the division. And although the pitchers are a little bit shaken up with injuries early on, I do think Cohen will do – this is his year to bring the championship. He's going to do whatever it takes at the deadline, maybe – to the detriment of the future of the franchise. I think he goes all in this year to at least, it may not pay off with a championship, but I do see the Mets winning the NL East. I had that priced at plus 240, followed by the Braves, Phillies, and then awfully distant towards the bottom, the Nationals and the Marlins.
All right, I'm glad you brought that level of analysis to the table, because on my end, I've got the same 1 through 5 as you. And I'm not going to need to belabor the point here. I'll say that my overarching theme for these division picks is probably going to be Matt versus DraftKings, because DraftKings is the book where I saw that Mets plus 240 price sticking out like a bit of a sore thumb. Now, knowing about your Mets fandom, some may be inclined to call this pick pure pressure. I do like to think of it as value, to the extent that I feel like there might be any value left on the board at this stage of the offseason. Again, plus 240 available at DraftKings. Plus 216, the price for the Mets to win this division at Circa, which is arguably the sharpest book in the country. And to get just a bit of math thrown out there with a teacher on the show, the break-even probability we're talking about at a price point of plus 240 for the Mets is 29.4%. At plus 216 at Circa, you need the Mets to win this division 31.6% of the time to break even. That's a delta of 2.2 percentage points. Might sound infinitesimal, but if we assume the true probability is somewhere in the middle, let's say it's 30% likely that the Mets win this division, we're talking the difference between a negative expected value bet at that Circa price and a positive expected value bet at DraftKings, not to mention, Connor, a bet that you will be actively cheering, both given your fandom and your pick that you've just put on the record on this show.
Absolutely. Citi Field is about 2.5 miles that way from this very apartment. So we're hoping it's another nice, fun summer in Queens. And looking forward to it.
And tell us what you're looking forward to in the NL Central in 2025.
NL Central, I'm going back to the well. I wasn't overly thrilled with, I'm seeing plus 125 for the Chicago Cubs. Not quite the value I would love in the division, but I just don't see anyone else that sticks out. I still trust Counsell as the manager. The lineup is good. They got 2 great pitchers at the top of the rotation with Imanaga and Justin Steele. Fully trust the Cubs will take this division. Don't love the value, but I do have the Cubs finishing in first, followed by Cincinnati, perhaps surprisingly. 3rd place, Milwaukee, 4th, Pittsburgh, and 5th, those Cardinals, who just seem stuck in it right now. They can't get out of their own way. They couldn't trade Arenado. Goldschmidt went to the Yankees. I think the empire's crumbling a little there in terms of the Cardinals. I had them in last place.
All right, another division with a lot of alignment. I too have the Cubs winning it, followed by Milwaukee and Cincinnati. So we're just flip-flopping 2 and 3, followed by Pittsburgh in 4th, St. Louis in 5th. And to add to the Cubs pick that we share this year, a parallel to my look at the Mets, seeing some value based on a bit of a price discrepancy. Circa has the Cubs price at even money. So without getting to the weeds on the math the same way I did for the NL East, if we just assume the true probability is 50-50 and we're getting plus money at DraftKings, then that makes this a plus EV bet in my book. So that's what I'll say about the NL Central. Connor, I'm feeling like we're probably going to make it 3 for 3 with alignment on division champs in the National League, unless you've got something really big up your sleeve. Go ahead and break down the NL West for us.
We've been doing this for 20 years. I feel like in my 20s, I may be going out on a limb and really going out with this.
Rockies.
Yeah, right. Yeah, just we got to hammer that value. How could you not? But at the ripe age of 37, I am going with the Dodgers to win the West. The best price I found, which I can't even say this with a straight face, was minus 500, which is so outrageous. So this will definitely be one where I probably parlay a couple of teams with them to try to get it around even money. But the Dodgers at minus 500 for a whole litany of reasons. You name it. The offseason was just as impressive as their World Series winning prior season in 2024. They're an incredibly talented team. They didn't lose much from last year, and I had them going far and away in this division to the point where with my fantasy baseball podcast, they actually mentioned perhaps some load management for some of their players, their hitters and pitchers in terms of even batting. So maybe this might affect the MVP race a little bit with the overwhelming favorite. But Dodgers in first, minus 500, followed by the Diamondbacks, then the Padres, Giants, and of course, way down there. Apologies to our friend Chris Bianchi with the Colorado Rockies in their second home of last place.
What's the name of the fantasy baseball podcast that mentioned load management for Dodgers position players?
It was Joe Piscopia on the Fantasy Pros fantasy baseball podcast, and he really dove into it, just saying, looks like a 6-man rotation for them, and with the Ohtani got banged up with his shoulder in the playoffs last year, and they're saying they got that guy for the next decade. They're in it for the playoffs. They're essentially already clinched. They're probably not going to be too worried about the dog days of August, going all out with all their players. So I found that really interesting.
Yeah, you clearly did your homework here, and I can appreciate it because I look at the odds board and I try to, again, pick off prices that stand out, but I'm reminded of Allison referring to us as the odd couple just based on looking at our rooms or hang out with us way back when at Boston University. And right now, the approach, you really knowing the game and being current with what's going on from a very qualitative standpoint across these teams, and myself just taking the admittedly much more boring quantitative approach that at times can work out well for betting purposes, but certainly looking to dovetail it with the entertainment value that you can bring to the table. And once again, we are indeed aligned on a division champion here. Not going to overthink this one. Also going with that price you mentioned on the Dodgers, minus 500. Again, value to the extent that you can call minus 500 value in any way, shape, or form is available at DraftKings. And as I think about it, this was their opening day price on the Dodgers last year, as I recall. That's before the Dodgers won the division, won the World Series, had a very impressive offseason, to your point. So I was a lot less surprised to see the Dodgers NL West price tag as high as minus 850 at Circa. One more little game of math comparison for me in the National League here. At minus 500, the Dodgers break-even probability is 83.3%. At minus 850, that shoots up to 89.5%. So these are some very, very high probabilities. Lock is not in my betting lexicon, but the delta between break-even probabilities at DraftKings and Circa tells me everything I need to know to make this pick.
Absolutely. Yeah, sometimes you just got to go with, don't be a hero out there. The number is the number. Maybe you parlay with a different team. And, with these betting numbers, my hope and dream one day, Matt, is that we come far enough in society where maybe do a little 5th grade lesson on these numbers here and there, maybe do like a morning enrichment. We do some stock market stuff in my school, but maybe one day if things really progress as a society, we can get into this in our school system to really build the future, like we can,
There we go. Got to teach them young. It's easy to say that tongue in cheek, but at the same time, I think there is something to be said for understanding. I mean, I'm not saying it's any form of responsible gaming to teach minors about all of this, but I do think building a foundation of mathematical understanding can set people up for better long-term success at any walk of life. So hopefully this is in some way informative to some of the audience. But moving on with my picks to round out the NL West, I have the Padres in second, followed by Arizona, San Francisco, and Colorado. So much like the NL Central, same winner, flip-flopping 2 and 3, and then aligned on 4 and 5. That's a lot of alignment for us from top to bottom across all 3 divisions in the National League. Part of me is encouraged by that, and at the same time, part of me hopes just for a more fun and maybe thought-provoking conversation, there will be some discrepancy across the American League. So, Connor, let's move over to the AL and run it down through us, your 1 through 5 out of the AL East.
Yeah, I feel like I took a couple more shots in here. I think I grabbed two division winners that looked to be third with the odds. But I'm gonna take one more shot in the East with Baltimore at plus 310. I have them. I just think one more year older for all their young superstars, whether it's Adley Rushman, Jordan Westberg, Jackson Holliday had a nightmare start to his career, but I think this lineup could be really, really special. They did lose Corbin Burns, which is not good at all, but I do think the lineup is enough to win a lot of 8-6 games, 10-7 games. I do have Baltimore plus 310 to win the division. I have them followed by Boston right away in second. I think the Red Sox had a great offseason. Alex Bregman got a preposterous contract, but I think him and the Green Monster are going to be best friends, batting in the middle of that lineup with Devers, Trevor Story coming back. They have some serious firepower in that order and a lot of young stars coming up as well. So I got Baltimore followed by Boston, then the Yankees, who have been ravaged, and I mean ravaged, particularly on the pitching staff this season. Then I have Tampa Bay Rays. I feel like if the Rays roster had any other label other than Tampa Bay Rays, they would be in almost Rockies territory, but there's just so much inherent trust there that I'll have them in fourth. And those Toronto Blue Jays, who have broke my heart time after time on this podcast, I am done with them now. They are in fifth place. Exciting lineup, but man, they have not gotten it together.
3 quick takeaways on your AL East picks. 1, you've learned your lesson with the Blue Jays. Watch, no, this will be the year that they somehow surprise and come through, but nice to see a little bit of flexibility there with your approach. Also, with regard to Baltimore, I don't have kids, but I feel like this is a proud father kind of moment for me. You cited a price of plus 310. DraftKings has them at plus 270, so you have done some line shopping. Seeing that plus 310 at FanDuel, well played. Might as well take the same bet with a better price. So loved hearing that. And Connor, I share your bullishness on Boston. In fact, Boston is my pick to win the division this year. New league, same concept. The price tag I'm seeing for the Red Sox, plus 350 at DraftKings, plus 250 at Circa. I struggle not to like the same bet at a significantly better price. I also don't mind it as a show of some BU pride, while the New York Yankees pitching rotation is in shambles at the moment, and Baltimore star shortstop Gunnar Henderson on the IL to start the season.
Yeah, I did definitely consider taking Boston to win the division. The lineups are comparable, I'd say, and Boston has a brand new ace who may have his name said later on this podcast, Garrett Crochet. So it's going to be very exciting. And, as the fans, they are what they are, but I think the league is in a better place when the Red Sox are in contention, mixing up in the AL East. It makes for a more fun summer. So good pick there.
I hope it proves to be a good one about 6 months from now. And rounding out the division, I had the Yankees, Orioles, Rays, and Blue Jays. So again, a little bit of a flip-flop there between 2 and 3. That seems to be a recurring thing. I guess this is actually 1 and 3 because you had Baltimore winning this division. But otherwise, we're on the same page with Tampa Bay and Toronto rounding things out in the AL East. As we shift gears to the AL Central, Connor, what do you have for us there?
Yeah, the Central, yet again, pick a number. That's just so tough to get this division ironed out. I did go with Kansas City at plus 310. I found them to win this division. I think they have a sneaky good pitching staff. I'm not sure how they're good because former Mets Seth Lugo and Michael Wacha, who didn't do quite a lot in Queens. Seth Lugo is more of a reliever, but they joined Cole Reagans as an exciting rotation. I think pitching is going to be a difference in this American League Central. The lineups are not outstanding that I could see across the board. So I do confidently take Kansas City at plus 310, followed by the very impressive Cleveland Guardians, who proved me very wrong last year. I got Minnesota sitting in third, flip a coin though on that. Detroit in fourth, and Chicago, of course. And I mean, of course, way, way down in fifth.
All right, this is the one where I figured we might have the most discrepancy just because who the hell knows with this division. I can't fault any of your logic. I'm going to give a hat tip to my friend off of the show and a friend of the show, professional bettor Las Vegas Chris, and call this the Yahtzee division. Can easily see anybody but the White Sox taking it this year. I'm going to go with Minnesota at plus 210, available at DraftKings and FanDuel. This is probably my most tepid division championship prediction, but similar to the angle of taking discrepant lines at DraftKings over what we're seeing at Circa. At plus 210 here, I'm liking the Twins over a sharper line of plus 182 at Bookmaker, an offshore book, but another sharp book at that. Behind Minnesota, I've got Detroit, Kansas City, Cleveland, and Chicago. Again, 1 through 4 throw them into a hat, pick them out in any order. We've got the White Sox bring up the rear, probably by a hefty margin. And we'll see if we have the same team bringing up the rear, maybe by a hefty margin once again this year out of the AL West. I'm afraid to get there, but Connor, what's your rundown in the home division of my beloved yet flailing Angels?
It's always fun to get to the AL West because I feel like the Angels have been beloved and flailing for the last 15 years. And here we are again. But I took the Rangers at plus 225. I found them to win this division. I feel like I was very bearish on Jacob deGrom last year with his health, and he indeed broke down. But he is looking great this spring. That my fantasy baseball research and sources are really, really high on him. And as I saw here in Queens, if deGrom is on, he is worth his weight in gold. He is an absolute ace of aces. It seems like he's dialing down his fastball a little bit for his own benefit. He was throwing 101, 102 with his heyday at the Mets, and his arm couldn't quite handle it. So I think he's found a nice sweet spot there to give ace-like production and stay healthy. And that lineup is still stacked. You know, they have Corey Seager, Marcus Semien, really good in the infield. So I do like the Rangers at plus 225 to win the West, followed closely by Houston, who's got to settle for a wild card this year. Seattle as well in third, Angels in fourth, and Athletics down in fifth.
I was feeling so confident until about 5 seconds ago that we had the same 1 through 5 in the AL West. For me, it's one more opportunity to take a DraftKings division line for the road. Texas plus 225, as you quoted. Circa hanging plus 195. We've got a 30-cent discrepancy. You know the drill. And on a personal note, I also hope that you were a year early with last year's call that Houston's reign atop the division was indeed about to end.
Yeah, and, you know, then losing Bregman, you know, I feel like every little piece from that awesome core that won a couple of World Series has now kind of fallen off. It's a new era there. They still have plenty of players, but Kyle Tucker also left to the Cubs. So they have Yordan Alvarez there anchoring the lineup. They got some pitchers, Framber Valdez. They'll definitely be relevant. They'll definitely be in the mix. But I see Texas just squeaking by them from the division.
Likewise, I also have Houston in second, Seattle in third. For me, it's the A's in fourth. I don't know if they'll go by Sacramento or if they're just the A's with no city attached for the next little bit until that stadium in Vegas is ready. And bringing up the rear, the Angels. For me, it's rinse and repeat from last year. Mike Trout still hasn't played more than 140 games since 2016. Anthony Rendon still doesn't care about baseball. And Artie Moreno still has his team years away from contention.
The Angels, everybody. It's so, I feel for you, man. I've been in those years where the owners just kind of sap the energy out of the fan base where, you know, opening day is this week and everyone's rah-rah. Then after that, it's all kind of downhill. So I've been in those seasons. It's really rotten to go through. But you know what? At least it's California baseball. They got a beautiful ballpark out there. But it's, as far as the team goes, what a tough era to look back on, you know, with having Ohtani and Trout and whatever Rendon was supposed to be, and now what's left of that. Hopefully Trout's able to at least keep some health because he showed a spark last year. The average wasn't quite there, but plenty of power, plenty of speed. You know, just gotta hope that body holds up.
Yeah, at this point, it's tough to count on anything, but I will say the silver lining might be not even having things go downhill after opening day when you have the frame of mind that I do right now. So maybe they will pleasantly surprise me and some others. That would be awesome, but not going to hold my breath. I do think while the Angels may be lackluster once again this year, we should be in store for plenty of more excitement once we get to the postseason. Connor, it is our third year with the new format. I feel like I'm starting to get the hang of it. 12 teams total, 6 per league. 3 division winners, 3 wildcard teams. The top 2 division winners bypass a best-of-3 wildcard round. The 3 seed, which is the division winner with the worst record, hosts the 6 seed, which is the wildcard team with the worst record. And then the 4 seed, which is the wildcard team with the best record, ends up hosting the 5 seed, which is the wildcard team right in the middle with the second best record of the non-division winning playoff teams. I hope that's not too convoluted. Again, 3 years in, starting to feel a bit more natural. From there, fortunately, it's basically the playoff format as we know it, division series, LCS, and then, of course, the World Series. Connor, you set the bar quite high last year. Give us your 2025 version of the NL playoff field. Go ahead and take us seeds 1 through 6, followed by wildcard round, division series, and NLCS.
Absolutely. You painted that picture beautifully for the playoffs. This was the first year in several I didn't Google how do the MLB playoffs work 10 minutes before this podcast. I think I can't even take that much credit because I think the Mets being there last year as like a fringe wild card team, there was so much talk over like, okay, if they're the last, they go to Milwaukee for a 3-game series, and then, whoa, they beat the Phillies. So kind of taking the Mets path last year helped me with this, but it's definitely a little convoluted. Nice. So let's get to it. The NL playoffs, the number 1 seed cannot go out on a limb here. It's the Dodgers in the top spot, comfortably at that. The second spot, I did put the Cubs in there. I think it's a little less of a cutthroat division than the Mets have to deal with in the East. So I have the Cubs squeaking by and getting that second bye, which can be very, very important for them. So Dodgers 1, Cubs 2. I have the Mets in third. This East Coast boy, once again, is showing a little bias. I have Braves 4 and Phillies 5 before we go out west, and the Diamondbacks are in the 6th slot. So let's see. We got 2 from the West, 3 from the East, and just the Cubs from the Central. As we move through this, if I got these seats right, I have the 3 Mets over the 6 Diamondbacks. I have the 4 Braves over the 5 Phillies, which brings the bye teams into play here for the divisional. I have the Braves shocking the Dodgers in the NLCS. A little bit of payback on that one for Atlanta. And the Mets over the Cubs as well, setting up the epic. Connor's childhood got ruined so many times by this matchup. Mets versus Braves in the NLCS. And I got to dance with who brought me. The Mets beating the Braves to get to the World Series.
As always, when you outline this, I hope that you are right where I may be wrong. We will get to some alignment here. That's a common theme of this year's picks, but when we get especially deeper on, there's a bit of discrepancy. Is there a price that you were able to track down for the Mets to win the National League? I can look in real time as well, but just curious if there was a number that you had spotted.
I didn't catch that one going into. I'll do some live research as well here.
Got it. All right. I'm looking. First up, I'll just check FanDuel and DraftKings as 2 of the main markets that a lot of our listeners would be able to get down on most likely. National League, I'm having to scroll down and expand FanDuel's menu for the Mets. That can't be right.
That can't be good. I see plus
there we go. I missed them. They were hiding in plain sight right there. They're the 4th team on the board, plus 700.
Okay.
Let's see if there's any difference over at DraftKings National League, plus 700. All right. So 7-1 it is for the Mets to come out of the National League. And I'll pause there with you, and then we'll get to our World Series picks after I run through my NL playoff picks as well. Then we'll do the AL and save the World Series as our grand finale. So in the National League, I've got the Dodgers as the 1 seed, your Mets as the 2 seed, bypassing the wild card round and enjoying home field advantage in the division series. Wild card round, I've got the Cubs as my 3 seed, as the NL Central champs, followed by Atlanta 4, Philadelphia 5. Tell me if that sounds familiar. And then an NL West wildcard team as the 6th seed. In my case, it's the Padres rather than the D-backs, which was your call. I will, as a native San Diegan, take San Diego to upset Chicago, and then I will take Atlanta as the 4 seed to hold serve and knock off the Phillies. So the divisional round, there's the football fan in me. The division series going to be truly divisional. The Dodgers over the Padres, Mets over the Braves. So in the NLCS, we will be running it back. And I'm afraid for your sake that we might be running back the outcome as well. Surprise, surprise. I've got the Dodgers coming out of the National League over the Mets. It may sound all too familiar, but if we get this matchup, Connor, I will implore you to catch a game or 2 in LA where there will be a place for you to stay and plenty of beer in the fridge.
Yeah, that's how we'll change things up. That's how we'll flip the result. I'll fly out there for the Mets, and we'll get a little mojo that way. I love that idea.
And one more little nugget with this pick. True to form, not going out on a limb picking the Dodgers, but I am surprised to see some, I guess we can put value in air quotes, the Dodgers plus 170 to win the NL at DraftKings, with most of the market at plus 125 to plus 140. So if we're seeing a 30 to 45 cent price discrepancy, again, for the same exact outcome, then might as well scoop that up if you are inclined to back the Dodgers to make it to the World Series again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Connor, let's go ahead and pivot from the NL to the AL and give us your American League postseason rundown.
Absolutely. And I'm going to just on that last note there, I'm going to use the H word, which you hate, maybe Dodgers plus 170 as the matchups come their way. Maybe you could start to hedge it out a little bit and, guarantee yourself. I'm not going to go there. I know that's the H word. I'm not going to go there. I want to get, you were a proud papa before, so I don't want to make you an upset papa.
Yeah, no, it's a very fair point. And what I'll say is, if somebody is purely hedging to lock in a profit, to each their own. your bankroll is your bankroll, and my approach might differ from someone else's, and that's totally okay. I feel like so often in society in general, anybody with a different point of view, that's often perceived as a threat. I've tried over time just to be more neutral about it and think, okay, it's not a threat or an attack on my point of view. It's just a different point of view. And if somebody's looking to hedge, also, I mean, we're talking about the Dodgers right now. This should be an efficient market. The season's about to start, and we see a price discrepancy of 45 cents for the most likely team to win the National League. So we could be in the playoffs, and if somebody's looking to hedge, maybe a bet to hedge doesn't show much value at one book, but it could show a bit of value at another. So there are cases where hedges can be plus EV. So to each their own, just putting it out there that if somebody is to do this, I appreciate your word of caution against it in a lot of cases. But if you do just a little bit of legwork, you can guarantee yourself a profit if you feel inclined to do so, while at the same time layering a plus EV bet onto another futures bet that has you sitting in a good position.
Very well said. I had to stick that in there for sure. So let's get to the AL. I feel like we might have a little bit of, not chaos, but I have a lot of lower seeds winning. So the seeds we have are number 1, Baltimore, number 2, Texas. They're the bye teams. Followed up by 3, KC, 4, Boston, 5, Houston, 6, Seattle. So I feel like kind of the upper seeds are kind of the up-and-coming young teams, and the lower seeds are kind of the established, other than Seattle. So we do have the 6 seed Seattle kind of upsetting KC in the wild card round. And we have number 4, Boston, beating number 5, Houston. So Seattle and Boston come out of the wild card round. Over to the NLDS, where we have Texas beating Boston, and what would be a great series. DeGrom and Crochet there, that'll be amazing. And we have Baltimore beating Seattle, which leaves us at the end of the mountain here with Texas versus Baltimore in the ALCS. And I just looked at the price. It looks to be plus 800. The Texas Rangers going to the World Series by beating the Baltimore Orioles in the ALCS. I had that at plus 800.
All right. Some areas where there are some pretty surprising alignment. And then again, as we get a bit deeper, that seems to deviate a little bit. I love the way that you outlined the thought process. Some of the more established teams maybe seemingly at the bottom, but some of the more up-and-comers at the top, and seeing where they may collide in the middle once we get to October. I had Texas as my 1 seed, so also a bye team. I had my AL East champ getting the other bye. It's funny, though. You have Baltimore as the 1 seed in the AL. I don't have them in my playoff field. So Texas getting a bye. You have the O's getting the 1. I have Boston getting the 2. My wild card teams, again, a similarity with a slight difference. Our AL Central champion taking the 3 seed. You had Kansas City. For me, it's Minnesota. I, too, have Houston as the 4 seed. And then, let's see, I have the Yankees as the 5 and Seattle as the 6. So an admission here, maybe it applies to both of us to an extent. Coastal bias could be out in full force. Despite the AL Central sending 3 teams to the postseason just last year, this year I'm only picking 1 team from each Central division. I think the same may apply to you, if I recall correctly, for the NL. And also I'm picking that AL Central champion to lose while being the home team in the wild card round, which means Seattle over Minnesota and the Yankees over Houston to get us to the division series, similar to the National League. Truly a divisional series here. Taking Seattle over Texas. Let's have some fun with this. And New York over Boston. Setting up an ALCS. I believe this would be a rematch of the 2001 ALCS when the Mariners won like 110 plus games. And then the Yankees were having a very nice post 9/11 moment before coming up just short in the World Series. But a rematch of an ALCS we saw 24 years ago, this time with the Mariners prevailing. And the best price I could find on this was 11-1. Go figure. That came at DraftKings. I would say this is where my casual fandom says the Yankees are going to miss Garrett Cole the most, and where my heart says George Kirby, the pride of my wife's hometown of Rye, New York, will lead Seattle to its first pennant in franchise history. Season opening IL stint for Kirby. Be damned.
Yeah, I love that. You know, Seattle's team, in my heart, I root for them a lot too. I don't know why. I just still feel bad for that 2001 team. I really thought they should have won. It's so much time has gone by. But I don't know why it still affects me, someone in New York, but I just kind of want them to win a World Series finally. So I really like that pick. Kirby, as you said, a local guy here in New York, super, super cool. And maybe he's not going to be picked in a little bit, just a spoiler. Maybe finally Julio Rodriguez fulfills that Wonderkins, all the hype around. So I think he has the talent, I think it was just a little too much too soon. in that mold. So if he can be his true self, they could have a hell of a season.
And Connor, we will use that to build up to the World Series. You have got a National League champion of your beloved Mets, and you've got an AL champion of the Texas Rangers. Who's going to win it all, and in how many games?
I don't see the Jacob deGrom revenge series going well for Texas. I'm going to dance with who brought me. I feel like it's been – I probably picked the Mets. If this is year 20, I probably picked the Mets in 12 plus of these things. I feel like it's been a few years, though. I feel like it's been a few years. We're back to dive on in. We're very, very excited about the season. The Mets winning the World Series, I found that plus 1,100 over the Rangers in 6 games. If you want that exact matchup, have a lot of fun, plus 11,000. That's if you really want to have some fun. But I do have the Mets eking it out. I think this is not the team we'll see in October. It's not quite complete yet. I don't think this team right now is winning the championship, but I do think that owner Steve Cohen will go absolutely all in. He is not one to be outshone by the Dodgers and their spending and their craziness. I think midseason is where he will round this team into form, get whatever player he needs, and I think the Mets team that he builds will win a World Series for the first time since 1986.
First time in our lifetimes. Would love to see it. And if the Angels even have any trade chips worth considering with whom they're willing to part, then I would have no qualms if they would ship them off to Queens and let the New York Mets do their thing and take you to the promised land. In my case, going to stick with a little bit of West Coast bias in the matchup and some recency bias with my winner. I'm taking the Dodgers over the Mariners in 6 games. Fading way to cap this off, seeing a price of plus 290 at DraftKings for the Dodgers to win the World Series, when most of the market at plus 220 to plus 240. So again, a 50 to 70 cent price discrepancy, betting on maybe the most common pick of a World Series champion. Quite surprised to see that shortly before opening day. But if there's even a smidge of value you could argue there is to be had along the way with picking the team that I just can't divorce myself from the opinion that the Dodgers are primed to do it again. Maybe it's myself now having lived in LA for 2 decades, but it just seems like as many funky things can happen over the course of a 162-game season and in really short postseason formats. The Dodgers seem about as anti-fragile as a team I can recall heading into the start of a season.
Yeah, hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. They've gotten stronger since last year. No one will disagree with that. And yeah, they are primed for another big year, no doubt about it.
And let's talk about some individual players primed for a big year, getting into our awards, starting with the MVP market out of the National League. Connor, who do you have taking it home?
So I wanted to just give a quick word here on my kind of surprise team, Cincinnati Reds, in second place. I faded this guy in fantasy because he scares the hell out of me. He's going to be a first-round pick everywhere. I'm not sure. His expected results are from here to the moon. I was afraid of him in fantasy. I'm going to kind of hedge that by putting Elly De La Cruz at plus 2,000 to be the MVP. If the Reds kind of show up in the second place in the playoff race, I do think he's exciting. He's all over the highlights. He's fast. He has power. He's everything that baseball wants in its new superstar. And I am going to take a shot here. Elly De La Cruz plus 2,000 to be the NL MVP.
That was the first name I thought of when you mentioned the Reds being a bit of a surprise pick to contend. So I like the logic there with that coming to fruition. This would be much more live than 20-1. And Connor, I promise to get more creative in other awards markets. I'm not going to make the same mistake as last year when I passed on Ohtani, especially by taking one of his teammates. No explanation needed, no bet necessarily needed at this price, but I'm seeing a short price, but a best price available of plus 172 at Circa.
Money's money. Absolutely. Yeah. If you feel great about yourself saying something, you hate even thinking about it, but something has to go wrong, you feel like, for him to lose. You don't feel like anyone's going to, even at their best, someone's going to outperform him. So you got to think if he's out there, if he's healthy, he will do what it takes.
If Elly De La Cruz can become a frontline starter for the Reds rotation, then I'll feel a bit threatened. But then again, that's reflected in those price points.
I would feel great about that plus 2,000 if that happens. Yeah, that I'd be in.
All right. And when it comes to the American League, let's see if you've got 20-1 or longer shot for this pick, or maybe getting a bit shorter with your look at AL MVP in 2025.
Yeah, way more conservative here. I was looking at the board, and with the fantasy baseball research I'm doing, if I had Kansas City winning the Central, it's impossible to imagine Bobby Witt will not have a gigantic year. He's the foundation of that entire team. Again, another young stud that baseball wants to make its new superstar. So Bobby Witt I have plus 450. So way less than Ellie, but I have Witt plus 450 from Kansas City winning the AL MVP.
Nice. And a fun fact is I do some real-time research. I don't know why it had not occurred to me to check into this before. If my 2-second Googling, as you outlined, that is correct, Bobby Witt, the nephew of former Angels pitcher and a good major league pitcher, Mike Witt. So there's something there in the genes with the Witt family. It would be fun to see him take it home. And I'm going to prove you wrong from an earlier statement. You said Julio Rodriguez would not be picked this year. I know you meant that for yourself. But I'm going to go to your guy from the last 2 years, thinking that if the Mariners are going to go to the World Series, then this is probably his year to make a big splash. So put me down for Julio Rodriguez, 20-1, available at both DraftKings and FanDuel.
So I was so afraid we would both be out on Julio. To have Julio stock 3 straight years, he's got to come through one of them. He's got to come through. Love the pick.
It's almost like in the NFL, there were handicappers who just took a very specific approach to backing the Browns for years when they were terrible, thinking, hey, at some point we've got to be right. And lo and behold, after about a decade, they were right. I don't know if they ever recouped all the losses, but if you say it right, if you say it enough, then it's going to be right eventually. I don't know, broken clock is right twice a day. We'll see if Julio can win the MVP one time. If so, 2025 would be a great time for that to happen.
Let's hope so.
Connor, NL Cy Young, no pressure after hitting a 30-1 shot last year.
I know my hands were shaking trying to make this pick. I was trying to say, okay, Connor, what did you do right last year? What went right? And I took kind of the less heralded teammate of a kind of hot arm, and I went with Sale because he was Strider's teammate and he could come through. I'm going off the board big time. It's a bomb at plus 6,000. His name is Justin Steele. He pitches for the Chicago Cubs. And if the Cubs are going to win the division, yes, Imanaga is going to have all the headlines. But I think Steele has put together back-to-back really, really good campaigns. His ratios tend to be really strong. The offense, if they could sustain him, will get the win total up, all the things that the MVP voters like to see. So he is way down the list. But for plus 6,000, I think I feel better about this than Sale last year, weirdly. So if the Cubs are going to win this division, I do think Justin Steele will have a large say in it, and he will be right in the mix at a value that should be way better than plus 6,000. Justin Steele.
Well, unlike you, I whiffed on my Braves Cy Young prediction last year and the year before that for a good measure. So I'm going to call for a changeup and get out of Atlanta. Also looking to the NL Central, looking much higher on the board. In fact, at the top of the board, the pride of Fullerton, California, Pittsburgh Pirates ace Paul Skeens. And I'm especially interested at that plus 300 price at DraftKings. I'm seeing much of the market at plus 200 to plus 235. So perhaps a bit of value, even if you want to take the shortest shot on the board. I promised Connor to get more creative after my Ohtani MVP pick. I didn't promise how much more creative, so I'll go ahead and take Skeens here. His stuff speaks for itself. It's all about health and innings pitched. He finished his rookie season last year with 160 innings. He's saying he'll be ready to go 240 this year. If we just want to laugh that off and split the difference, say he hits 200 or so, it's hard not to think this is his to lose, which, if memory serves me correctly, should be music to your nephew's ears.
Absolutely, yes. My little nephew Brendan, huge Pirates fanatic. They live down in Florida, and the Red Sox spring training is right near them. The Pirates came to play the Red Sox, and my nephew Brendan's favorite player on planet Earth is Jack Sawinski, left fielder for the Pirates. And in the middle of an inning, they were on the kind of left field lawn seats. They asked Sawinski for a ball, and Jack threw it up to them. So Jack Sawinski is long in the hearts of the Reilly family because he gave his number one fan a ball. But yeah, Paul Skeens, he's obviously very, very excited about it, very excited for the future of the team and of Skeens. And again, another fun pick, another really, really fun pick. You love seeing him go out there, striking out everybody, young. Hopefully the Pirates are up and coming. Really like that one.
I appreciate you calling it fun, given that it is maybe the most obvious pick aside from Ohtani MVP and the entire awards market. And let's see how much fun, Connor, we can have to round things out with the American League Cy Young market. Who's your pick this year?
Yeah, I'm the one playing it safe on this one. I thought his odds would be a little higher, but Garrett Crochet of the Red Sox, he is a young superstar. Things did not go well with the White Sox. What does go well there these days? I'm not going to hold that against him one bit. Going to Boston, I think he's going to find himself right in the thick of, a baseball crazed city, right in the thick of the playoffs, things he has no idea even exist. Health is a little bit of a concern, But, with the stuff that he has, the strikeouts, I think the Red Sox will get him plenty of wins behind that offense. I have Garrett Crochet at the meager price of plus 450 to win the AL Cy Young, which obviously took a hit with Garrett Cole getting injured. He was always a mainstay on that list. So there's not a whole lot to choose from. I will take Crochet at plus 450.
I like that you're calling out plus 450 on Crochet. I think that is the DraftKings price. At FanDuel, it's plus 360. Also with Bobby Witt, your AL MVP pick, you quoted plus 450, and he's at the top of the board at FanDuel at a price of plus 280. So again, Simple line shopping. If you just compare two books, you don't have to have 20 accounts, but I think the show is showing that can go a long way. So again, appreciate the homework you've done for all of this. And Connor, just like you've picked a Mariner to win MVP the last 2 years, I've picked a Mariner to win the Cy Young Award the last 2 years and come up empty-handed. I'd love to stay on the George Kirby train, but I can't do it in good conscience given an IL stint with shoulder inflammation to open the season. So instead, I prepped this before I saw the jersey that you're wearing, while I was inspired by your Chris Sale call last year, going with a star who may be a bit of a reclamation project, but if he can stay healthy, we know how good the stuff is, and if he's on a good team, some of those more superficial metrics may also elevate the candidacy. Jacob deGrom, now of the Texas Rangers, plus 1,400 at both DraftKings and FanDuel. deGrom, on one sense, is on the other end of the spectrum than Skeens in terms of grains left in the hourglass that is his career, but similar to Skeens in terms of the stuff being there and really just needing health and innings to win the award. Again, I say really just needing health and innings. That's a big ask of deGrom at this point in his career. I think that's reflected in the significantly higher payout than we saw with Skeens, reflecting the significantly higher volatility. deGrom, kind of on that Mike Trout path of pitchers, if you will, hasn't started more than 15 games since 2019. So not trying to call this a slam dunk, but given the stuff we know he's got and given the price points, I'm able to look past injury is a clear concern. I feel like maybe a silver lining could be that he may be fresher than your typical 37-year-old starting pitcher since he's only pitched 104 innings in the last 3 seasons combined. Maybe that means a little bit less tread on the tires to keep him going strong deeper into the year if he can just stay on that mound. I'm hoping he can sniff 170-ish innings to have a shot at the Cy Young Award. Connor, you probably know better than I do if that's too much to ask. What do you know about deGrom's candidacy in the AL relative to a price point of 14-1?
He's got the stuff. There's no doubt about it. Look at Chris Sale last year for the case study. Big, established, amazing fastball. deGrom has nothing but the most special place in my heart. He gave me some of the best memories I have as a Met fan. deGrom Day was an event at Citi Field every time he took the hill. So, and I miss him. Like you just said, 100 innings the last 3 seasons. I think baseball misses him. He's a fun player. Obviously, I wish him nothing but the best. Will his body hold up? And maybe we talked about the Dodgers, and how they might have some load management. Maybe if Texas has a really, really, really good year, it might kind of hurt this bet a little bit in terms of let's dial back deGrom a little bit, save him for the playoffs. But I think with the division they're in, that might be way, way down the road in the season. I don't think it'll cost them too much. But I'm not sure if his body can handle it, but I sure hope it can.
All right, I appreciate the measured take. On one hand, I think the sentiment that can come into play when voters, as humans, this is not the most objective process to vote on these awards. deGrom would be an easy guy to get behind. And at the same time, of course, no surprise if due to injury or load management, the innings count just doesn't warrant the award. So taking a flyer at 14-1. And Connor, fewer flyers involved when we're looking at regular season win totals. Most of these will be lined in the range of minus 110. I think for the show, typically anything in the range of even money to minus 120 is where we tend to gravitate. But anything's on the table as far as what you've identified as potential value. Go ahead and take it away with your first regular season win total for this year's beer bet.
Absolutely. So I went with the unders last year. I think I'm going to be a little more optimistic this year. And I'm going to take a theme that hurt me last year in terms of all 3 of these picks are strangely going to involve Terry Francona in some way. Terry Francona is thankfully back in the league. He's with Cincinnati. I do have them in second place. And to justify that, I'm seeing an over 80.5 at minus 105 at Caesars, I think is the best price I'm seeing. But I'm going to take Cincinnati's over this year, over 80.5, minus 105. I like that value. I think they finish over 500. I think they surprise some people. So give me Cincinnati over as my first pick. Staying on the Francona train, Cleveland, who made me look horrible last year, I'm seeing the over at only 82.5, which is a big chop from last year's win total. And I don't really see justification in that. So I'm going to take Cleveland over 82.5. I see it looks like minus 105 at DraftKings. So I will take Cleveland to be over 82.5 at minus 105. And the final one, it involves Francona's pass, the Boston Red Sox at over 86.5. I'm seeing it minus 120. So give me the Francona trio. We're optimistic this year. The unders treated me terrible last year. Give me Boston, give me Cleveland, give me Cincinnati, all to go over their win total.
All right. I, too, am feeling more optimistic this year. I've got 2 overs to just 1 under. And, Connor, if you like the Reds over 80.5 at minus 105, I think you'd love the over 78.5 at minus 115 that I'm currently seeing at DraftKings. Again, I'm in California, so you tell me if you're seeing anything different if you check around. But that really stood out to me because a book like Circa, they're over under 80.5 flat, and that is a delta of 2 full games. It turns a 79 or 80 win season for the Reds from a loss at a book like Circa to a win at a book like DraftKings. Another sharp bookmaker hanging over 79.5, juiced heavily to that over minus 125. So compared to the DraftKings line, we're talking about a full game plus 10 cents more vig. So correct me if I'm wrong based on what you're seeing out of DraftKings, but yeah, instead of over 80.5, I'm happy to put us both down for Cincinnati. Again, we often have some overlap here. We don't trade this in advance, but both of us feeling optimistic about the Reds' prospects in 2025.
I do absolutely. Yeah, just seeing now, DraftKings does have that price. That is fantastic for me. And yeah, I think that they have the manager, they have the young talent to do it. And as we just heard with your picks last year, the hook could be all a difference. It could be a half game that changes a winner into a loser. So thrilled to hear that I get almost 2 full games. Excellent.
Yeah, good callback with Colorado losing by the hook as far as my picks went last year. But this one, 2 full games is tough to find, again, when we are on the doorstep of opening day. So if anybody at DraftKings might be asleep at the wheel, maybe they know something I don't. I want to remain humble in all of this because handicapping baseball season win total markets is not my bread and butter. But when I see these kind of price discrepancies, when the market is this liquid, I'm going to jump at it. And that's going to be a through line for me with my other 2 picks as well, both out of the AL West. I'll start with the one that isn't as optimistic, but I think one that we will be cheering for. Houston under 87.5, seeing that at minus 115 at DraftKings. A bit of a quantitative and qualitative look at this. On the qualitative side, it's an angle that their run is over, no love lost when it comes to a team like the Astros. On the quantitative side, comparing 87.5 at DraftKings to the lines at Sharper Books, Circa is hanging 85.5 flat is the Astros win total. Another delta of 2 games, which means Houston winning 86 or 87 games. That's a loss at Circa. It's a win at DraftKings. So gotta give that at least some consideration. And then bookmaker posting under 86.5, juiced heavily to the under at minus 126. So relative to that DraftKings line, 1 full game plus 11 cents more vig to the under. So put me down for Houston under 87.5 using that widely available number at DraftKings. Last but not least, staying in the AL West, I don't know what city to use when referring to this team, so let's just call it the Athletics. They're your last place team. I'm feeling a little bit better about their prospects. Athletics over 71.5 wins, seeing that at minus 110 at DraftKings. Circa posting a flat 73 as the over-under for the Athletics, so we're talking a delta of 1.5 games. Bookmaker posting the Athletics over 72.5, minus 123. So a full game discrepancy from DraftKings, plus 13 cents more vig to the over. I get that it's really easy to understand the notion of fading a team without a home, especially a team with the A's track record in recent seasons. But at 71.5 at DraftKings, especially relative to what we're seeing at some of the sharper books out there, I just think that number is pricing that in and then some.
Yeah, I think the A's kind of have a stigma on them now. They don't have a home. They've been really rotten the last few years. They have some players. Brent Rooker is talk about fantasy baseball, he's a stud. They maybe the best closer in all of baseball, Mason Miller, provided they hang on to him. So there's reason to be bullish on Oakland this year, or the Athletics this year, compared to the recent past, for sure.
It's all, by the time you get used to not prefacing Athletics with Oakland, it will be time to preface it instead with Vegas. So it's just always going to keep us on our toes. Connor, to recap our regular season win total bets, you've got Cincinnati, we'll call it 78.5, the number at DraftKings. Cincinnati over 78.5, Cleveland over 82.5, Boston over 86.5. I'm looking at Cincinnati over 78.5, so some alignment there. Houston under 87.5, and the Athletics over 71.5. I will let you once again call the tiebreaker. This is the time where you get to choose either your favorite pick or what you consider to be my worst pick. We're going to naturally take the Reds off the table here. But Connor, if we finish the season with the same record, which team do you want to use as a tiebreaker to determine who owes the hops to whom?
I owe Cleveland a big apology from last year. My apology will be in the form of them being my tiebreaker. Give me Cleveland.
All right, Cleveland it is. So we've got over 82.5 for them. If push comes to shove, I might be rooting against them. But as a big Major League fan, just watch it this past week and dig it in the spirit.
Oh, nice.
No problem in my book if Cleveland sails over that win total as well. And now, Connor, at this point, to keep the baseball theme going, we can round third and start heading for home, weaving in the two pillars of the show to take us home, the Malinsky Minute and the hops. We'll start with the Malinsky Minute, and I will preface it by noting that in 3 weeks, just about on April 14th, we will mark 7 years since Dave's passing. I think that it was one of the nicest surprises of my night at the Stardies to make a new friend who was a fellow fan of Dave's, and one of Dave's qualities we discussed was that he was so well-rounded. And the joys of doing this live. It looks like I just lost Connor on the stream. We'll put a pin in the Malinsky Minute, and we'll see if we can get him back in short order. If you're live with us, I'm just reaching out to Connor just now. Able to rejoin. That's a first. More than 300 episodes in. Live stream. Losing the guest. He is looking to hop back on here. I don't know what the cause may be, but I've had a couple power outages recently that have led to similar issues. So hopefully all is well in his neck of the woods, and we will be rocking and rolling again in just a moment. In the meantime, I've still got some of my We're Listening can left. So I'm going to take a sip, and if you're joining us with a beer in hand as well, feel free to enjoy. All right, here we go. We're back. We are back. Let's see. Can you hear me okay? And give me just a quick sound check on your end.
See what happened there. Sorry, buddy.
There we go. All good. I still had some of my beer left, so just took a sip.
Beautiful.
Was able to buy some time, enjoy some beer. So we are all good. Glad that all is well on your end, and thank you for hopping on so quickly. And I will reset us with the Malinsky Minute here. I think you heard me note that in about 3 weeks, yes, on April 14th, we'll mark 7 years since his passing. And then as we got disconnected a moment ago, I was noting that one of the nicest surprises of my night at the Stardies was to make a new friend who right away said he was a fellow fan of Dave's. And one of Dave's qualities we discussed, you may recall from that night, was how well-rounded he was. So Connor, in that spirit, in what ways would you say you've become more well-rounded over the last 7 years?
Yeah, that was a really great experience at the Stardies to see you guys connect like that. You know, I saw the kind of joy it gave you, so it gave me joy as well. And I appreciate this question. You know, did some deep reflection. I usually don't do that kind of stuff for our baseball preview, but it really made me think. And I think particularly at our age right now, staying grounded can be, you hear it all the time, but it's so hard to do, really not measuring yourself up against others around you, especially in these days of social media, the age we're at right now. I don't know about you. Everybody's having a kid every other week. Everybody's, doing this, that, and the other. And, as we go through our 20s, we're like, whoa, cool. It happened for them. The third, as it gets our age, it's kind of like, whoa, like, am I behind on things? Like, what's kind of the right pace to do things? And I just try to stay grounded and say, there is no right pace to do things. We all have our different paths, and believing that you have a path and you're on it and keeping faith in that path. The outside stuff can only kind of be a negative sometimes if you try to measure yourself up against what others are doing. So I try to stay grounded in that. I'm living a very happy life right now. I don't have things that other people have, a house, kids, and all that yet, but having the full faith that the path that we're on is the one we're meant to live. And that really helps you stay grounded, because this day and age with all the surrounding factors, it's easy to be ungrounded. So just trying to keep that faith and keep that confidence about things.
That is so well said. And it's really intriguing for me to hear that from you, because knowing you're like the life of every room that you enter. And it was such a thrill to be at your bachelor party, at your wedding last year. I know your career is on such a solid path now. And still to know that, like, I can be in a social setting with you and I'm having a blast. I'm like, man, this guy is just, he's got the charisma. He's got the sense of humor. He really knows how to light up a room in ways that I just don't. And yet everything you outlined, it still resonates. So I can't put it any better than you did. Maybe a common thread between your thought to that question and mine would be doing some work on the internal game, if you will, and focusing less on all things external. My answer to this question would be rolling with the unexpected. And I think part of that is because I am a big time planner. In many ways, that's one of my biggest strengths. I use planning to get a lot of things done. In other ways, you could argue it's one of my biggest weaknesses. I'm sure I can come across at times as rigid. And when I get stubborn about sticking to a plan, I can probably close myself off to potentially better alternatives. So 3 examples come to mind of rolling with pretty big unexpected events in the last 7 years since Dave's passing. And without abandoning my identity as a planner, I like to try to think about this with a bit more proper reflection. 1 would be Dave's death in April of 2018. 2 would be just experiencing something like COVID, as we all did throughout 2020. And then 3 would be the first and hopefully only job loss of my career that came very suddenly. When it came to Dave's death, there's no perfect playbook to roll with something as life-changing as the sudden and untimely death of a loved one. But in a strange way, I feel like it's brought me closer to other loved ones and led me to new relationships with other people who knew or respected Dave, and that's profoundly improved my life. When it came to COVID, my wife and I bought our first house in late 2019, and I can't imagine we would have made that choice to put our life savings on the line had we known what was mere months around the corner. But I also can't imagine it turning out any better than it has so far, from the forced experiment to hunker down in our new community, with which we have fallen in love, to the counterintuitive way in which it's proven beneficial to the biggest financial bet of our lives thus far. And then when it came to the job loss, I got fired in the fall of 2022. I felt blindsided and betrayed, but that played a role in leading me to my current job, which I feel fortunate to consider the best of my career to this point by far. So the takeaway here for me is that unexpected developments can lead to the lowest of lows. They can also help lead to the highest of highs. And often what might seem like a clear negative or positive at first can go hard the other way over time. So sometimes when it comes to the unexpected, rolling with it is about all you can do.
Absolutely. And that kind of rolls right into and I know you said for the next 7 years, how do you stay grounded? And it's really keeping the faith that you're on the path you're on. And at least for me, it's just, again, another cliche, but there are things you control in this world, and there are things that you absolutely do not control in this world. And the best you can do is the stuff you can control, do everything you can, towards your career, the things that where effort and drive are the difference, make it that difference. But there are sometimes you put maximum effort in, you prepare all you can, and life just says, nope, not this time. And, it's being prepared for that stuff to happen. And just, if you don't have a game plan for when it does happen, that's okay. Everyone rows that boat at some point in their lives where they don't have control over something and they got to kind of scramble, work on the fly, keep their faith, stay on the path they're on, and just do the best of what you got. It's all we're trying to do,
Yeah, and to that point, whether things are going well or not so well, my theme looking ahead for the next 7 years or so would be embracing small wins. Because I feel that, like planning, I consider discipline and objectivity to be 2 of my strongest qualities, but they can also be a double-edged sword. And for the most part, I think they serve me well in terms of personal relationships, health, career. But too much discipline, too much objectivity, that can suck a lot of the day-to-day joy out of the equation. And without consistent joy, I'm inclined to question the purpose of all of this in the first place. So I try to keep telling myself it's important to be playful, celebrate everything worth celebrating, especially when you're as fortunate as I am. Going back to personal relationships, health, career, I could not ask for more. And maybe it's that my 40th birthday, I think for both of us, 40 is starting to appear on the horizon. It's not too imminent, but to quote Meg Ryan in When Harry Met Sally, it's there. So I feel as aware as ever that the clock is ticking and want to be mindful of enjoying the journey and savor these special years and the moments that make up those years that you can't get back along the path to other milestones a bit farther down the road.
Yeah, that's so beautifully full circle with our picks preview here. It's the small wins because we're not putting a whole bunch into these picks. And,
unless it's a Chris Sale win, then even the small bet adds up in a big way.
But, having fun with things, being playful, like look what we're doing right now. We're talking baseball. We're talking about the season ahead. And, I know for some people, they take it a lot more seriously and it's what their life is built on. But, for us, who's got better than us being able to talk sports, make some fun wagers on it. It's our path and it's a pretty cool one to be on.
Cheers to that.
Cheers, buddy.
And on that note, speaking of small wins, let's get back to the hops to bring this baby full circle. Connor, a small one we toasted at the Starties was a shared new beer experience. We did get our hands, after some effort, on Grateful Dead Juicy Pale Ale by Dogfish Head. I had some major FOMO, as you witnessed, when we missed the first wave of cans at the event and saw seemingly everybody else enjoying it, but was pumped to get our hands on it later that night. From the signature Grateful Dead can art to a signature Dogfish Head beer. What did you think of it?
I thought it was great. Yeah, I think Dogfish Head is a beer that I enjoy consistently. And I had just gotten my dad, who's a Grateful Dead fanatic, a 6-pack of it earlier, but I had not tried it yet. But the cans looked amazing, of course. Thought it was great. It was nice. It was worth the long wait, the long journey to get those, as you said, at the Starties. And got a little surprise for you, win or lose, with the beer bet. The wonderful people at Pick Beach in Queens had a little promotional coasters of that brand of beer. So I got you quite a few of them that will be sent your way soon.
Oh, hell yeah. It's so funny. I have my standing desk at home, and I was like, I think I might need to replace some coasters. They're getting a little bit warped around the edges. So it's a little thing, but with that kind of connection, it's going to have a bigger meaning and it's going to come at just about a perfect time. So thank you so much for that. And yeah, I'm always going to look at that and remember our chance to share that beer for the first time together. I thought it was really fun in that it had the light body you often want and come to expect in a pale ale, but that can often mean the aroma and flavor get dialed back when you're thinking about a pale ale compared to an IPA. Not so much in this case, and I think that's a good thing. To me, it was really impressive with a lot of citrus and tropical notes, and it lived up to the hype. So I was very happy about that one. And Connor, final question for you tonight. From your Vegas bachelor party to your Ireland honeymoon and beyond, in the last year, what other highlights have you enjoyed the most in the world of hops?
Yeah, I can't believe it's almost exactly a year coming up in about a month from the bachelor party in Las Vegas. You really stole the show from the plans. My family still talks about all the beers you somehow managed to bring and, treat me to each night. That was obviously an incredible start to these last 12 months. I'm going to focus probably on our honeymoon. My wonderful wife, Jackie, and I went to Ireland for our honeymoon, starting in Dublin and going around the whole island. And, I have Irish roots, and my thing was Ireland, Guinness factory, Guinness. And it was that in Dublin, but it was very interesting as you go around the island. We went to the Smithwick's factory, and Smithwick's takes a great pride in that their sales are pretty much equal to Guinness. They let us know, and people wouldn't know about it, especially here in the States. But Smithwick's, we had a lot of that there. We had the Kilkenny cream ale there. And as you get out of Dublin, most bars are all about Murphy's Stout, which tastes exactly like Guinness, but I guess it's a little more, local and a little more pride in that. So just going around Ireland, seeing the different kinds of beers that we really, really enjoyed.
Man, I feel like on this show at times, and it's not intentional, but maybe when I talk about anything related to the hops, it can spark a bit of FOMO and others. I think you just instilled about as much of that as I've been on the receiving end in the history of this show. So if and when I can finally get over to Ireland and drink my way around, I know who to turn to for some good tips.
Yep.
Connor, I think that's going to wrap us up another edition of one of my favorite annual traditions. Surreal to think it's been 20 years, now 5 years on this show. Thank you for keeping it going strong. And cocktail or beer, always looking forward to the next time we can toast each other in person.
Thank you, buddy. Here's another 20. We're just getting started.
All right, to the next 20. And to the audience, thanks as always for tuning in. Enjoy opening day across Major League Baseball.